So I don't know how well it will show up in the video, but if you look at that motor, you can see the motor's slightly tilted forward. If I come in close, you can see that angle between the motor and the belt guard. So what's happened basically over time is this bracket here, which is the motor mounting bracket, has bent. And if you look at it, essentially it's just made of sheet metal. So what I want to do is I want to beef that up. You'll also notice that these sliding pins here that adjust the motor backwards and forwards to adjust the tension on the belts, that's getting quite close to the end of its travel. You can see that recessed in there. So yeah, so it's timely that we fix this up now. If I put a straight edge across the top of the pulleys, that's the spindle pulley and that's the idle pulley, and I come across here to the motor pulley, you can see that angle that I'm talking about. So it's tilted forward quite a bit, and that misalignment is also adding to the belts being chewed out. So what I need to do is basically remake that bracket. Like I said, I want to make it a lot stronger, and also raise the motor up a little. It's obviously it's slipped there for some reason, so we'll see if we can fix that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remake the motor mounting bracket out of this 10mm thick steel plate. So normally what I would have done with this bracket is, or to mark out the mounting holes on this bracket, is I would have placed the motor itself on the bracket and just traced it out. But I can't do that because I need the drill press to drill this piece of steel. So what I've done is I've taken some fairly accurate measurements, I hope, and we'll drill those 4 holes out, and they're the motor mounting holes. And then after that, I'll mark up the holes for the slide mounts that mount it actually to the body of the drill. I've ended up having to take the motor off the drill anyway, but that should be okay, I hope. I've only got 2 holes left to drill in the new mounting plate, and that's for these sliding pins here. To get the position of these on the new plate, basically what I'm going to do is just, again, try and take some fairly accurate measurements. I'm going to measure the distance from the center of this hole here to the top of the motor, so the drill head. Also take a measurement from the top of the drill head here to the underside of that spindle pulley, and also take a measurement from the top of the motor here to the underside of that pulley. And hopefully with all those measurements I should be able to work out exactly where to drill the holes for these sliding pins. So let's see how we go with that. So these are the measurements that I've come up with. On the pedestal drill head itself, the distance from the center of that mounting hole there to the underside of the pulley is 109mm. The distance from, on the motor, this is the motor, the distance from that the center of that top bolt hole to the underside of the pulley is 58mm. So that's a difference of 51mm. So what that means is that I have to drill a hole in the center here, 51mm down from the center of that top mounting hole. So just to basically confirm if I'm sort of in the ballpark or correct with that, what I can do is use the original bracket to take a measurement and see if it's fairly close to the 51mm that I've come up with. So if I place the ruler there, I'm reading roughly from that mounting pin to where the motor originally mounted on this bracket. I'm reading pretty close to 50 millimeters, probably about 48, just eyeing that off. But if you do remember, that motor was sitting a bit low in the drill. That pulley needed to come up, I think it was roughly about 4 to 5 millimeters to make it level with the other pulleys. So that does work out pretty close to that 51 millimeters. I've drilled those 2 center holes now for the locating pins. Just did them by hand. It wasn't too bad actually. I did manage to do them with the battery drill, so that went pretty well. I suppose it pays to have sharp drill bits. The only issue is those holes, they're just slightly out. They're too wide, probably only by about a millimeter or so. So I'm going to have to hit them with the round file. What I've got in the machine is I've put those locating pins, I've mounted them in the machine and tightened up the locking screws so that when I do mount the plate, I know that those pins are perfectly aligned. So I'll mount the plate while these are in the machine. The other reason for that too is, if you notice here, they've got a tiny little flat section on them where the locking screw beds into, so I've got to make sure that's orientated properly as well. So yeah, so I'll just elongate these holes just slightly with a round file and see if we can get that back on. Well, it didn't take much filing to get those holes to line up with those locating pins, so I've got that plate back on the drill and that's looking a lot better already than the original bracket. Now, as I said, that's a 10mm piece of steel. The offset on the original bracket is, you can see there, is 20 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pack out at the back here another extra 10 millimeters so that the motor ends up in the original position. Okay, got the motor mounted back onto the drill, onto that new bracket, and it's packed out there as you can see. And yeah, it all lines up really nicely now. I'll put the straight edge on it, and the pulleys are all aligning now, which is really good. So that should help make the belts last a bit longer. If you notice there, I just had to put a little bit extra packing on the bottom and not as much on the top. Yeah, look, all I can put that down to is either that bracket that's mounted to the motor itself isn't perfectly symmetrical, or the holes in the side of the drill casing here are not drilled square to the rest of the body. So that's fine. Those couple of little washers there fixed it up. As you can see, if you look at the gap just underneath that belt guard, it's nice and straight now. So the whole thing's looking really nicely aligned. So what we'll do now is just get the new belts in place. So to install the drive belts on the machine, first thing you want to do is just make sure that the motor is at its full adjustment forward. And the next you just want to basically pick which speed you want to have the machine at. Just for now, I'm going to go with 1450, which is B3. So if you look on the diagram, B3, the rear belt has to be on the third pulley down, and on the front belt, the second pulley down. So we'll start with the rear belt first. So just turn that idler pulley as far around as it will go to give us as much play as we can. Then installing the belt on the smallest pulley on this side, and then just working our way down to a larger pulley on this side. So that's pretty simple. And then for the front belt, we'll just work it down one notch at a time. So we just try and pull that across as far as we can, and then slowly rotating that, and that should just drop into place. And then working back, always working towards the smallest diameter first, and then up to the larger diameter. And that's as simple as that. There you go, that's in place. And the last thing we want to do is just pull up that tension on the belts. So as you can see, that belt's pretty loose. So just using some sort of lever, I'm just going to pull that motor backwards. I don't want it too tight. Still want a little bit of play in there. If you over tighten that, you'll certainly wear out the belts prematurely. So once I got it in place there, just tighten up the locking screw on both sides, and that's it. We're ready to go. Turn it on.